A stored procedure is a great way to automate queries, and especially if the query is very long or complicated. So but first, a stored procedure, it's a database object. It's precompiled code that's stored in the database, and it's owned by the creator's login. So I'm logged in as an SA, therefore I own this stored procedure that I'm about to create. Know that the security permissions are checked at runtime, so it's a pretty safe way to manage code. Some best practices with stored procedures: the DBO, owner or SA, creates it and then grants permissions to others to use. Another best practice is to never use select star. Always itemize the select clause. Return only the columns that are needed, and avoid overloading resources, specifically physical I/O. Another reason to not use a select star is because after, say, adding a column to a table, then a select star is going to return different results than some apps would be expecting, and those apps will fail. So we'll use the CIAC database, and my first step is to write the queries, just general queries, that will comprise the core of the stored procedure so that I know what I'm doing. And in this case, I'm going to get all the information for a specific order. In this case, order number 20, and it worked out just fine. When I create the stored procedure, the first thing I do is I write a few lines of code that says, if the stored procedure already exists, go ahead and drop it, because typically I need to run through this process a few times to get it right. This makes it easy. Then I am going to create this procedure, give it a name. Stored procedures are database-centric, so unique names within a database. Specify the input parameters. In this case, my naming convention is @var. Order ID says the variable order ID, and it is an integer value. That expect that coming in. I do error checking at the very beginning with the input variables. If there's an invalid value of order ID that comes in, I don't want to run through the entire code to the very end and then throw the error. I want to do it at the very beginning. So if not exists this order ID, then raise the error and return, and that's it. The rest of the code doesn't execute. Else I'm going to query the table, and here's my query with the variable. So that is the stored procedure itself. Then I'm going to grant execute on this stored procedure to, in this case, one individual. That's an unusual situation. Typically, you're going to be granting to a group who has permission to execute stored procedures. In this case, they belong to the database role DB executor, which we created in another learnlet. If this is going to be a generally accessible stored procedure, just grant permissions to public. Grant execute on this stored procedure to public. Then I'm going to test. Now, when you're doing serious unit testing, it's nice to know who you are. So go ahead and run this little piece of code, and this is who I'm logged in as. As the creator, I should have no problem executing this stored procedure, and I'm going to execute it against an order ID that I know exists, and that is my result. This is exactly what I expected. Now I'm going to execute it against an order ID that I know does not exist, and sure enough, there is the error message that I coded at the very beginning of the stored procedure. The next step that I want to do is to log in as an individual or a group to which I've granted permission. So I'll either open up like a new query or whatever and test it, and it should run. And if this is a restricted stored procedure, then log in as someone who has not been granted permission and test, and they should not be able to see it. And that's all there is.